everyone, my name is Yashni Priya, and in today's video I'm going to be creating this illustration of some stacked books. Now I love drawing books and I love books in general. I love reading, and I'm sure a lot of you also enjoy reading books as well as drawing them. They're a lot of fun. So I just want to create this illustration where I have a bunch of books all stacked up on top of one another. There's a few standing up against the stack, and then there's a little smaller stack on the side beside the tall stack of books, and some books are standing up against that stack, and there's some few books scattered all over in front. So I just want to create this a little illustration with a whole lot of different books. I'm not going to go too detailed into the books and the coloring in and anything like that, but they are going to be different colors, and they're going to be they're going to look all different, and they're going to blend together really well. So my intention for this was just to be a whole lot of books, a little illustration for these books. So I went in with a graphite pencil, and then I just did the entire illustration, and once I was done with that, I went in with a fine liner, black fine liner, and then I just outlined everything. Now what the thing is with books is it's not so difficult to draw them once you get the angle right of one. So you can just use a book that you have around and then just put it at different angles, like standing up on towards the left, stacking it up on and letting the top show, letting the spine show, letting the front show, letting the pages show, different angles, and then you can just use that as a reference for drawing them. So once you get one of those angles, you can draw multiple books in that angle, because it's not difficult once you get that first angle and proportions right of it, because you need to have the proportions correct in order for the book to actually look, even the perspective, you got to have that right. So that's something I would advise you to try using any book you have, just to try and get the angle of the book, and try to get the perspective of the book, like if it's standing up and if it's at an angle from the top, and you're seeing, like for example, the ones that are standing up against the small stack of books on the right side of the illustration, you will see there are two books standing up. They have got, you can see the top of the book, because obviously they're lower than the stack that's beside it, and or the one that's the tallest stack, and they are at an angle, so you can see the front covers of them. So just experiment with different books and different thickness of books as well, and different angles, and then practice drawing those if you have a difficulty drawing books and getting the perspective right. But once you get one or two angles right, you'll get a feel for it, and you'll be able to do much more. So as you can see, I just went in and first painted all the pages, or all the areas where you can see the pages of the book, with a beige color, which has got a hint of brown with a hint of a yellow ochre, just to have the color of the book pages. And I wanted it to look more old book pages, not white like a brand new book. And then I'm just using different colors. I'm trying to keep it a bit vintage and not let it be too shocking colors used for the book covers. So I went in, and some of them do have some designs or outlines or patterns on the spines and on the covers, some of them, and some of them don't. But you can see I went in with first with some blue. I went in with a very sort of a denim color. I wanted it a vintage color look. I didn't want it to have a very bright look to it. There will be a few bright colors in between, but for most part they are vintage books. And then you will see I used a darker, or not very dark, but I used a medium toned brown, just to color some of those brown. And then I'm going in with some green and getting a sort of this is a sort of a fern color green, but a bit more olive sort of green. And I'm using that just to color some of the other books. I'm trying to change the colors for the books and not let too many be one on top of the other the same color, although there is the one with the blues, they are together. But I am using some darker blue just to put the shadows on the books underneath, and also add some shadows where the books are overlapping, to create the shadow on the books beneath those books. So you can see I went in also with a sort of a reddish tone, a reddish pinkish tone for two of the books, and then I went in with a more sort of a brownish red color tone for some books as well. I'm just differentiating the colors and creating a variety of different colors, so the books have a bit more interest. And then we are going to define some of those details on the books and make them look a bit fancy with some metallic colors as well. So for now I'm just still painting in all the books, and I'm just deciding what colors to make all of them. So I'm using a variety of browns, greens, reds, blues as well, just to get a variety of these little vintage books. So this one I think is about the brightest book that's there. This is a more of a magenta color that I used for that book underneath the blue one in the center of the illustration. And then I went in again with a more red brown tone again, and I'm using that for a few books as well. Then I went in with a brighter blue, not too bright, but I've just added a bit more saturation to the color and made it a bit more vibrant, and I'm using that for the blue that's on the book on the ground. And then I just added another book for the color for the book from the front. That's also a pink, sort of a book, pink color, a sort of a pinkish, it's a pinkish reddish tone color. And then I've just used that for adding some color for that book. Now, just remember when you're working, be very careful not to let the colors go or work in an area that's still wet, because when you're adding the colors, because they're so close to one another, if you're painting one book cover, it can bleed into the next book cover if the previous book cover is not dry. So try to space it out and work or dry the layers in between. That way you won't have that problem when you are painting. But if you do have that problem and it spills over, just use a damp, clean brush and lift off that watercolor that you applied, and you should be back to the original color that it was, or the previous layer, or the color that the previous layer was. So now you can see I've just added all the colors to all the books, and they are all painted. And now I'm just using some metallic paint pens of the Derwent Inktense paint pens. This is a metallic set, and I'm just using some of that a brighter gold and that medium or that mid gold color, as well as the silver. So I'm using it for different books. Certain books I'm using the silver, certain books I'm using the bright gold, and certain places I'm using the more muted color, or more of a pewter color. I'm using that for some of them as well. So this is entirely optional. You don't have to use metallics in your drawings. You can use just do some painting or with other colors onto the covers, but I just wanted to add a bit more dimension with the metallics, because if you turn the page at certain angles in a bright light, you're going to see those metallics really shine through, because it's this paint. What I like about these paints, they have a very slight shimmer to them. They're not stark solid gold. They have a more of a shimmer when you add them to any illustration. So that's what I enjoy using them for, just as little bits of details to the illustration, just to really let that illustration pop. So now once I was done with all of the books, I just wanted to, it looked very plain there, not having anything in the background, just a plain white background of the paper, and I was not happy with that. I wanted it to have a bit of something going on around it. So I decided to add in washes of a watercolor to the entire background. So I started off with a light wash of a brown, a very light brown, and I just got that all over the entire background. And then I slowly built up the layers by adding more and more layers of a darker brown and darkening up certain areas, because I wanted the color to look rich, but I also didn't want the background to overtake the books, and you will not be able to see the books. So don't make it too dark. If you're attempting to do an illustration like this, try not to make the background too dark, where it competes with the foreground elements that you are creating or which you have painted in your illustration. The background must still stay receded in the background, and your focal point, which is your actual drawing, must be visible and must stand out compared to the background. So just bear that in mind when you're doing any illustration. Try to keep the background as a bit more sort of not as saturated and bright, so that you can obviously be able to let the subject that you are painting stand out instead of the background. We don't want the background to overpower our main illustration. So now I went in with a very wet brush, and I'm using some darker browns, and I'm slowly darkening the browns around. I'm creating these little patches of color which looks more like old paper or vintage paper, and I wanted to create that look, but also have this darker color towards the edges of the paper, but then also let some of that blend into the actual drawing's background. So you can see I'm just adding some spots and a little bit of color here and there. I'm not worried if it is going to be splotchy here and there. I want that kind of effect. So all of that helps me to create that sort of aged paper look with you know, the speckles and stuff like that of browns and color on there. So the brown color on there. So now I just went in with, after I was done with all of that and it was dry, I just went in just to touch up certain areas with more of that metallic paints, and just to let them stand out a bit more, like maybe some places needed an additional layer, or I wanted to add a bit more of a design, whatever it was. I just wanted to create a bit more design to each one and add a bit more of that metallic, and then obviously let that dry thoroughly, and then just go in with my fine liner and just refine some of those lines that I lost with the paint when I painted over with the metallics. So there we have our completed illustration. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to like and share. Feel free to comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Till the next one. Bye.